All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
It's Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. The governor makes his move on his order. Indiana lawmakers will hold a special session to redraw our state's congressional maps. This comes after nearly 3 months of pressure from the White House. Governor Mrvan called the session for November 3rd, but state lawmakers say it will take longer to assemble. The move targets both districts currently held by Democrats. I talked to one of those Democrats in the crosshairs, Congressman Frank Mrvan. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to the conversation.
How concerned are you going into this special session?
I guess the concern that I have is for the working families of Northwest Indiana. The concern that I have is that this is about equal representation and what members of Congress and what I can do as far as a balanced or a checks and balance system for the state of Indiana. I believe in bipartisanship. I believe that middle ground is something that we should seek and not run away from. And if you have an all red state and an all blue state, then you're going to accelerate extremism. And so this is about two folds. These are very, very, very challenging times for Hoosiers. What I mean by that is it's not fair that working families are seeing skyrocketing utility costs. It's not fair that groceries are going increasing costs at the grocery store. It's not fair that homeowners insurance is going through the roof. These things aren't fair. But the fact of the matter is we're spending time, energy, and capital on a political issue. And why are we doing that? We're doing that because the administration's policies have failed Indiana Hoosiers.
To that point, what is your response to Republicans who say they need to do this in Indiana to counter gerrymandering going on in other states?
Sure. The first, I say this to everybody, is what can't you justify? Because if you look through and you turn the page to the next part of that story, is there are multiple Republican one-sided states. Utah, there are multiple states that have one member of Congress or two members of Congress that are all red. And so when will it stop? It reminds me of the movie War Games. Someone shoots a nuclear weapon, then the other one, then it keeps continuing. What I'm telling you is there are sound-minded senators, state senators right now that are resisting this. They have faced 2 visits from a vice president and a phone call from a president, but yet they are still saying there's not an appetite for this in the state of Indiana. There are other issues, like I say, the cost of living, affordability, public safety, being able to provide for your family. These are the real issues that are going on.
Right, long term, right? Hey, real quick, and this is a two-part question. What are your thoughts on some of the protests that we've seen about this? What does it say about the electorate? And also, have you had a chance to talk with fellow state lawmakers about this, and what are they telling you?
So, as a member of Congress, my father served in the Indiana State Senate for 40 years. He retired about 40 years ago. My family is very familiar with the body. The only message that I have to them, and I don't want to infringe myself. I'm doing my job. I want to make sure that government gets back open, that we do everything to protect working families that are going to be losing SNAP, to make sure people get health care coverage, to get our federal workforce back to work. Those are my priorities. Currently redistricting, you had mentioned the protests that are going on. I think that individuals with Hoosier values believe currently that this is unnecessary. 4 years ago, the state representatives and the state senators bragged about the fairness of their maps, how they went from community to community to community to get feedback, how they kept communities of interest together. That is vitally important. Now, as a member of Congress, I'm going to keep doing, and I'm going to be a candidate no matter what my lines are, and I'm going to keep fighting for working families to lower costs so they can provide for their families. And ultimately, my message to the state legislature is when my father was in the Senate and when I was a local elected official and now as a member of Congress, I never intentionally made the wrong decision.
One more question for you. Any solutions on SNAP or WIC at this point?
You know, first and foremost, the solution is I was a township trustee for 15 years. I have seen and sat across the table from individuals who need a little of assistance to get to the next level so they can become self-sufficient. Ultimately, where we are now with SNAP, that is a cruel choice the administration is making, a very cruel choice. And there are solutions, and I'm glad you brought that up. There are reserves that are in place to the tune to $5 billion that could be utilized. This administration chooses not to use that, making it a pinch point and adding cruelty to what we are doing to fellow Hoosiers, our neighbors, who may be stuck in this moment with affordability and need a little help to get to the next side or the next day. And so there is a solution. I'm calling upon not only this administration, but the governor to consider releasing emergency funds so that food banks across Indiana and in Northwest Indiana have the resources, because there are reserves available, to make sure our neighbors have food so that there is food on their table and that children, seniors, and veterans and all of our neighbors don't go hungry when they are utilizing this temporary solution.
All right. Well, Congressman Mrvan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking some time and joining the show. Thank you.
I thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to address not only the citizens of Indiana, but also Northwest Indiana. And I thank you.
Anytime. Thank you. All right. Take care. Now, the Senate will likely be the key House. Republicans leaders say that they have the votes to redistrict, but Senate leaders say they don't. Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith says that he's working to move state senators into the yes column. Beckwith is the ceremonial president of the Senate. Our Garrett Berquist caught up with him a day after the announcement.
The Senate Republican caucus says they still don't have the votes to support. Do you think that's going to remain the same?
No, I think we'll get the votes. I think with what the president's doing, with what the governor and I are doing, we're making the case. And we're not strong-arming anybody. We're just saying, here's the case. This is why it's important. I think the president's done a great job of calling especially the Senate, and saying this is, we're not forcing you to do anything, senators, but this is why we think this is so important, to take back some of the voice that we've unfairly lost in Washington from gerrymandering and poor census data from other states that have done nefarious things in their census data. So I think the president, the governor, and I are making the case, and I think we'll get there.
Do you foresee yourself using your tiebreaker role in the event this thing does get to the Senate floor?
Well, I would love that if that could happen, but I don't think we'll need it. It'll be closer, but it'll probably be 27, 28 if I had to guess. I'm just guessing, but would be more than happy, and it would be an honor to cast a tie-breaking vote if I could.
I don't know, Governor, there's been a few, this has been going on for a few months now. Yeah. If after a few months of discussion, senators still haven't, come around to yes on this, what is it that they're not getting? What more is there to say?
I don't think we've had the serious conversations until just the last couple of weeks, because, a few months ago it was out there, hey, maybe redistricting, but nobody was really making the case or really studying the why behind the redistricting efforts. Last few weeks with Vice President Vance coming to town, with President Trump making the phone calls, Governor Mrvan and I making phone calls, we're starting to say, this is the why, guys. This is why we need to do this. And as we sell it and say, cast the vision for it, people are starting to say, okay, that makes sense. I can get behind that. And that's why you're seeing some that either were kind of on the fence that are now supporting it, or even some that were initially a no, coming around saying, okay, I can get behind this now. I don't think how this looks in the end is really the goal. I think ultimately the goal is to get back our voice as a state in Washington. So I think you got to do tough things sometimes. I think you got to take risks, and I think it's worth the risk because, again, we are a collection of states. And we need that voice as a state in Washington, and so I'm willing to take the risk. Would it look bad as a state if we couldn't come through? I mean, we're a very red state, a very conservative state. Yeah, it probably would look bad, but I think it would also then maybe highlight some deeper issues that we can then work to fix. So ultimately, I think it's a win. And I think it will, whether it goes, for redistricting or against redistricting, I think it will ultimately, in the years to come, it'll actually prove to be a very solid thing for Indiana because I think we can, maybe it will even help us get our house in order if we need to.
Is this worth the risk and the potential cost of a lawsuit, particularly if the judges end up coming back and saying, no, you can't use these maps?
Totally worth it. And here's why. Because we have some states playing by different rules. Illinois is playing by their own set of rules. California is playing by their set of rules. Indiana is basically saying, okay, if they get to play by their rules, then we're forced to play by our rules. I don't particularly like that. If in a perfect world, I would be against redistricting if I could count on that the other states were playing by the same rules we were playing by. But I hope the courts get involved because the courts need to say, here are the rules for everybody. This is what you do and this is what you can't do. And if we could trust that Illinois, California, Massachusetts, New England states, New York, we're all playing by the same rules, I think we'd have no problem. But when you have other states that are just making up their own rules, that's the problem. And so I think even the courts getting involved would be a great win for the nation.
Coming up, Indiana's best political team looks ahead to the special session. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Kip Tu and Republican Tom John. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for coming by. Tom, I'll start with you. Governor Mrvan, as you very well know, said he would not call this special session unless he felt he had the votes. Now Senate Republicans say they still don't have the votes. So what drove the decision?
Well, I mean, I think that, one, you heard, I believe there's a tweet from the governor that he has a different whip count than what we're hearing out of the Senate. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't have the internal data. But I think that they're pretty confident that when it goes up on the board, they'll have the votes. And they feel that they have a duty to the rest of the party, the rest of the nation to do it.
I'll let you weigh in on this as well, Kip.
Well, the reason I laughed at your question is because everybody knows why they feel like they have to do it, because the Trump administration is forcing them to do it. They're threatening things that no politician, no elected official ought to be threatening, and they're doing it in a way that they shouldn't be doing it to try to force a rigged election in the 2026 cycle. It's unprecedented. We haven't, in Tom's lifetime, there's never been a mid-decade redistricting ever. And so this is insane. And the excuses they're using for why they want to do it fall apart when you do the analysis. Right now in Congress, in the 2024 election, they got over 50% of the members of Congress, but they only got 49% of the vote. So they already are overrepresented. All the arguments they make about, well, we have to fix this because Massachusetts has all Democrats, it falls apart when you just look at the membership in Congress and the vote they got the last time. That argument's completely ridiculous. And then the second argument that the lieutenant governor made, which was, the census was wrong. The census was run under the Trump administration. The last census was run with the President Trump. So if there was a problem with the census, it was Trump.
So to that point, what about their argument that they have to do this because California is now coming back and redoing
California is responding to what Texas did. So every time Republicans are like, they do something really bad, and then Democrats respond, and then they go, see, the Democrats are terrible. That's all this is.
I'll let you weigh in on that as well, and then I just have one more question for Kip.
Well, I mean, it's great for Kip to pull out the numbers of 50-49. The reality is you go next door to Illinois, and they have 17 congressional seats. They have 47% of the state votes Republican, and they have 3 representatives. You go to the Northeast, you've got 6 states where there's roughly 40% in total of the population are voting Republican. They have 0 representation.
And if we did that math in Indiana, Democrats would either have 4 or 3 congressmen, and now they're going to try to give us 0. So it makes no sense, Tom.
Kip, we have about a minute left in this segment here. Democrats need 16 Republicans to stop this. Yeah. Can they make that happen, you think?
I think it's an uphill battle. I don't think that the President Pro Tem wants to do it. I will say the President Pro Tem has the power to stop it if he wants to stop it himself.
This gets done at the end of the day, guys, you think?
I think once you started, I think the governor said he wasn't going to do it if he didn't think the votes were there. I think by doing so, by issuing the special session call, I think you're probably going to see the votes there, and then we'll see what happens on ballot boxes. Because first time we discussed this, I don't know if anybody knows what drawing a district looks like now. And so it'll be an interesting election next year.
Kip, yes or no? It's going to get done?
I think it will get done.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We'll have much more to come after the break. When we come back, we ask how effective plans to help SNAP users will be. Stick with us. Much more to come after the break. All right, welcome back. Still with us are Republican Tom John and Democrat Kip 2. Funding for SNAP and WIC has effectively run out, gentlemen. Here in Indianapolis, city leaders, nonprofits working to raise millions of dollars for local food pantries. Kip, how sustainable is this, and how well does this fill those food assistance programs?
Well, look, my hat's off to all the people doing the work that they can do to make sure people get fed. I think they're doing the Lord's work. Unfortunately, the Lord's work's not being done in Washington, D.C. The President of the United States has the ability to solve this problem without Congress doing anything. There's a $5 billion reserve fund sitting out there that he could access to make sure people don't starve and go hungry and have to do these things. They refuse. They're using this as a political weapon, and they're hurting children by doing it, and they don't care.
Tom, your thoughts?
Well, I think you actually are looking at a situation where it's pretty rich that the Democrats in Congress, you have had federal unions say, Democrat congressman, please pass a clean CR and please make sure we continue funding. They refuse to do so. They're the ones that hold the keys to this, and they're the ones that are inflicting this pain, but then step back and go, well, wait, this is all on President Trump. President Trump's trying to keep our military paid. He's trying to keep our borders secured. He's trying to make sure that the country is safe. And you're saying, well, but you got this pocket of money there. I mean, it's pretty rich.
Go ahead.
Here's what's rich.
Respond.
Republicans control Congress, they control the White House, and they control the United States Supreme Court, and they're acting like this is the Democrats' fault. Tomorrow, they could get rid of the filibuster and pass what they call a clean CR. But if you're a Democrat, why would you vote for something you fundamentally disagree with? And so they're trying to force, because of the filibuster, several senators to vote against something that they truly don't believe in. So they have control, they can fix the problem, and they refuse to because they don't care.
Tom, does this, you think, obviously a very divisive issue, do you think this is going to force the end of the shutdown?
I mean, I think it should, because there's no doubt people are getting hurt. And, as I said, the Democrats in Congress have the keys. The fact is they're the ones invoking the filibuster. And Republicans aren't necessarily wanting to continue going down the road the Democrats started by getting rid of the initial versions of filibuster with regard to judicial
Democrats
nominations.
fundamentally disagree with where we are with spending in Congress and how the Congress has completely ceded all authority of the purse to the president. How would you expect them to vote for continuing to do that? He, even after this passes, is going to do everything he wants by fiat. How could you force them to vote for something they think is ridiculous?
Well,
it's ridiculous.
I remember
I've used that word way too many
Obama.
times.
I remember President Biden. There was an awful lot of fiat that went in there, and all I ever heard was elections have consequences.
Yeah, okay, if election has consequences, you guys need to get this done.
You brought it up, Kip, and so did Congressman Mrvan, talked about the emergency funds.
Yeah.
Why not use that? And when the Congressman brings it up or when Kip brings it up, what's your response to that?
I mean, the fact is, it just diverts from the issue that's here, which is
But it feeds
the
people,
Democrats
Tom.
in the Senate need to do their job. It's that simple.
Do you think it will get used if it gets to the point where, hey, this doesn't cause a shutdown?
I can't get inside the president's brain, and even if I were there, it'd probably be a brain worm, so I don't think that I want to go there.
Okay. How long do you think this is going to go on for, guys? Shutdown?
Yeah, I saw this week that Senator Thune and Democrats are talking. That's a good sign. They hadn't been talking. I worry Mike Johnson won't bring Congress back in, won't seat the Democrat for over a month. I worry about whether they can get the Republicans on the House side to go along with something because they tend to be a little less rational than the United States Senate. So I don't know. I'm worried about it.
What about some other food assistance programs of, Kip, that maybe we're not talking about?
Well, we've got in central Indiana, we've got Gleaners Food Bank. They're a fabulous organization run by Fred Glass, who's one of the great people that ever lived in Indianapolis to help us. So I think that they're going to do everything they can, and I would ask everybody who's listening to this show to please give money to Gleaners and other folks during the interim, but it's not going to be enough.
Yeah. Tom, final word, about 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'm going to just agree with Kip. Right now, what's happening in D.C., most of us can't directly control. What we should do is help our neighbors.
Okay. Gentlemen, always good to see you. Good conversation. As always, thank you very much, and we will be right back. Well, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. Of course, all eyes on the special session this week. We'll, of course, be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30, and be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.